Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 621, just the last two lines, and Ranga will give us the summary of that passage, that paragraph. It's a long paragraph, and it ends at the bottom of 622.
The summary about that last paragraph goes like this. It's all about good and evil. Okay, so on the same basis as argued earlier regarding truth and falsehood, we may say that good exists by true consciousness and evil survives by wrong consciousness. If only true consciousness could exist, then only good would exist. Evil cannot come in or be formed in true consciousness. Our human values of good as well as of truth and falsehood are mixed, uncertain, relative. What is good here is held to be evil elsewhere, in time and space. It is seen also that so-called evil produces good results, and what is considered good often ends in evil. Okay, so I have given two examples. Okay, war is evil, but it eliminates Hitler, who is an even worse menace. So war is considered evil, but it was necessary to get rid of an even worse menace. Okay, then the other one, philanthropy, okay, is good, supposed to be good, but if you make the target of your philanthropy an able man, okay, you may make him lazy and dependent on you. So you are producing an evil result. Okay, even in the physical world, not evil and good, but a little related. When a flood comes, it destroys. So you consider it evil, but along with it, it fertilizes the soil by alluvial soil. So a forest fire, the same thing. It destroys, but then it clears the field for new growth. So you can give many examples like that. So the reason for this confusion is a mixture of knowledge and ignorance, as also true consciousness being invaded by wrong consciousness. In the opposite case of good resulting from evil, it is true consciousness entering into the wrong consciousness or intervening from behind the surface. This mixture is the very nature of human mortality and the cosmic force working in the human level. This mixture is not a fundamental, fixed, unchanging condition. It can be altered. So, last time we gave an example also of evil producing good. Okay, so we gave two examples, but here again there is another example. Suppose someone with hatred discourages you from doing something, it may produce a good effect in you to, I will conquer my incapacity. So evil intent can produce good in the person to whom it is directed. So there you are. So an objection can be raised at this stage, and it could be held that physical evil, such as pain and suffering in the body, have no connection with knowledge and ignorance, nor good consciousness or wrong consciousness. But it is to be noted that all suffering and pain is due to the lack of consciousness force in the body, life, mind. It is the paucity, the lack of consciousness, that causes inability to cope rightly with the self and nature. Purusha Prakriti. Pain and suffering would not exist if there was luminous consciousness and divine force in the body. So, your pain and suffering is definitely a result of the wrong consciousness in you. If the right consciousness was there, you wouldn't feel the pain.
It's a very strong statement.
Yes.
Very strong.
But what is right consciousness? When you are in the body-mind life, the right consciousness can hardly be there. It's only when your soul goes out of the body-mind life that right consciousness can come in the soul. The body-mind life will go on with its old habits, but you are not feeling the pain anymore.
So, just to carry on this thought a little more, what do you feel about the world situation today, which seems so grim?
Yeah, it's a working out of there's a lot of evil, but something good will come out of it, that is sure. Because that's the principle, that's how it works.
So we'll go to the next para,
Yeah.
which is at the bottom of page 622. Top of page 623. It is no doubt.
Yeah. It is no doubt a fact that once truth or good manifests, the conception of falsehood and evil becomes a possibility. For whenever there is an affirmation, its negation becomes conceivable. This is because, I am explaining, this is because the duality is here. When manifestation comes in, all the dualities come into play. As the manifestation of existence, consciousness and delight make the manifestation of non-existence, inconscience, insensibility conceivable, and because conceivable, therefore in a way inevitable, for all possibilities push towards actuality until they reach it. So it is with these contraries of the aspects of the divine existence. It may be said on this ground that these opposites, since they must be immediately perceivable by the manifesting consciousness on the very threshold of manifestation, can take rank as implied absolutes and are inseparable from all cosmic existence. But it must first be noted that it is only in cosmic manifestation that they become possible. They cannot pre-exist in the timeless being, for they are incompatible with the unity and bliss that are its substance. In cosmos also, they cannot come into being except by limitation of truth and good into partial and relative forms, and by a breaking up of the unity of existence and consciousness into separative consciousness and separative being. For where there is oneness and complete mutuality of consciousness force, even in multiplicity and diversity, there truth of self-knowledge and mutual knowledge is automatic, and error of self-ignorance and mutual ignorance is impossible. So too, where truth exists as a whole on the basis of self-aware oneness, falsehood cannot enter, and evil is shut out by the exclusion of wrong consciousness and wrong will and their dynamization of falsehood and error. As soon as separateness enters, these things also can enter. But even this simultaneity is not inevitable. If there is sufficient mutuality, even in the absence of an active sense of oneness, and if the separate beings do not transgress or deviate from their norms of limited knowledge, harmony and truth, sorry, I'll read that again.
Harmony and truth can.
If there is sufficient mutuality, even in the absence of an active sense of oneness, and if the separate beings do not transgress or deviate from their norms of limited knowledge, harmony and truth can still be sovereign, and evil will have no gate of entry. There is therefore no authentic, inevitable cosmicity of falsehood and evil, even as there is no absoluteness. They are circumstances or results that arise only at a certain stage when separativeness culminates in opposition and ignorance, in a positive unconsciousness of knowledge and a resultant wrong consciousness and wrong knowledge with its content of wrong will, wrong feeling, wrong action and wrong reaction. The question is at what juncture of cosmic manifestation the opposites enter in, for it may be either at some stage of the increasing involution of consciousness in separative mind and life, or only after the plunge into inconscience. This resolves itself into the question whether falsehood, error, wrong and evil exist originally in the mental and vital planes and are native to mind and life, or are proper only to the material manifestation because inflicted on mind and life there by the obscurity arising from the inconscience. It may be questioned too whether, if they do exist in supraphysical mind and life, they are original and inevitable there, for they may rather have entered in as a consequence or a supraphysical extension from the material manifestation. Or, if that is untenable, it may be that they arose as an enabling supraphysical affirmation in the universal mind and life, a precedent necessary for their appearance in that manifestation, to which they more naturally belong as an inevitable outcome of the creative inconscience. So, Srimandra is asking the question, we will go into detail, but Srimandra is asking, where does this wrong, evil, all these things, where does it come in? Ignorance, where does it come in? At what point?
And from where did,
Yeah, at what point does it come
yes.
in? So now he is answering also. So we'll have a look at what he is asking. Okay, so it is no doubt a fact that once truth or good manifests, the conception of falsehood and evil becomes a possibility. If this is clear, it's okay. But he is talking of manifestation. When there is no manifestation, there is no possibility of truth and good. But when it manifests, in other words, takes form in the physical world, the dualities come into play. So, at the highest level, you have only truth and good. But when it comes down, they undergo the law of multiplicity. So, truth becomes multiple truths. And when it comes down here, you have law of dualities.
And yet he says becomes a possibility.
Yes. But that possibility becomes, because he is saying possibility because even in the physical world, it is not absolutely essential.
Yes.
That's why he says possibility. Okay. So as the manifestation of existence, consciousness and delight made the manifestation of non-existence, inconscience, insensibility conceivable, and because unseeable, therefore in a way inevitable, for all possibilities push towards actuality until they reach it. So is it with these contraries of the aspects of the divine existence. So he is saying something interesting. He is saying that in the physical world, whatever exists tries to perpetuate itself and go to the extreme limit. So even if there is a possibility of a little bit of falsehood, it will try and reach the extreme falsehood. That's what he is saying. Okay? It may be said on this ground that these opposites, since they must be immediately perceivable by the manifesting consciousness on the very threshold of manifestation, The threshold of manifestation is the overmind. Can take rank as implied absolutes and are inseparable from all cosmic existence. He is saying that they are always together. It can be said. Now, Scripture is not saying this, note very carefully. It may be said. When he is saying it may be said, he is saying that someone can challenge me and say that this is possible. Then he will himself answer. So you must note the words, it may be said on this ground. Okay? That these opposites, since they must be immediately perceivable by the manifesting consciousness on the very threshold of manifestation, can take rank as implied absolutes. What are the implied absolutes? Falsehood, error, evil. Okay? And are inseparable from all cosmic existence. It can be contended, that's what he is saying. Now he is answering. But it must first be noted that it is only in cosmic manifestation that they become possible. Only not above, but only below. Yes. Okay? So, they cannot pre-exist in the timeless being. Which is the timeless being? Higher mind onwards. When you go beyond the modes of nature, sattva, rajas, tamas, body, mind, life, you are in the timeless. So from the spiritual planes of consciousness, higher mind, elemental mind, intuitive mind and over mind, they don't exist. That's what he's saying. Okay? Only in the manifestation. But it must first be noted that it's only in manifestation, cosmic manifestation, that they become possible. And which is the cosmic manifestation? Matter, life and mind. Only here, evil, falsehood and untruth, it can remain at this level. So, they become possible. They cannot pre-exist in the timeless being, for they are incompatible with the unity and bliss that are its substance. Now here again he is saying that as soon as multiplicity starts, the possibility enters in. So, it must noted that it is only in cosmic manifestation that they become possible. They cannot pre-exist in the timeless being, for they are incompatible with the unity and bliss that are its substance. In cosmos also, they cannot come into being except by limitation of truth and good into partial and relative forms, and by breaking up of the unity of existence and consciousness into separative consciousness and separative being. So when separation comes in, then evil and falsehood can come in. And what is separation? Ego. Ego is the one that makes you feel separate. For where there is oneness and complete mutuality of consciousness force, even in multiplicity and diversity, there truth of self-knowledge and mutual knowledge is automatic, and error of self-ignorance and mutual ignorance is impossible. So what Sendra is saying is very interesting. He is saying, for where there is oneness and complete mutuality of consciousness force. What is meant by mutuality? If you are there and I am there, and our consciousnesses are mutual, means I can enter into you, you can enter into me, and it's perfectly harmonious. So then wrong consciousness cannot come in.
No possibility.
Only when there is separation, then it is possible. Okay? So, note the words oneness and mutual, complete mutuality of consciousness. One very best example of mutual consciousness is Mother and Sri Aurobindo. She repeats again and again that our consciousness is the same.
Yes.
That's a mutuality. Okay, so, to a certain extent, this is, you can also think of it like twins. Very often, biological twins, they have this sense of mutuality. It's not spiritual, maybe, but it's at a physical level. The vibrations one can feel. Okay, so it's like two instruments being tuned together. If I tune two sitars at the same vibrational level, if you play one, the other will vibrate.
Yes.
So that's mutuality. Only if there is a non-mutuality and there is a no harmony between the sounds, then there can be evil and wrong consciousness. So, even in multiplicity and diversity, their truth of self-knowledge and mutual knowledge is automatic, and error of self-ignorance and mutual ignorance is impossible. So too, where truth exists as a whole on a basis of self-aware oneness, falsehood cannot enter and evil is shut out by the exclusion of wrong consciousness and wrong will and their dynamization of falsehood and error. So, Sandra is using a very interesting word. Where there is wrong consciousness and wrong will, it can be translated dynamization of falsehood and error. It can end in false action and false feelings. It can manifest. Note the word dynamization. Okay, it becomes practical. It becomes physical. As soon as separateness enters, these things also can enter. He is not saying they can also enter, he is saying. Okay? Because, as I said, Mother and Sriyamdo are in the physical world, but they don't have an ego, there is no separateness. So, evil and falsehood cannot enter there. If there is sufficient mutuality, now this is a very interesting statement. If there is sufficient mutuality, even in the absence of an active sense of oneness, okay? Sufficient mutuality. You and I are very harmonious, but we don't have that sense of oneness. Even there it is possible that wrong feelings and wrong actions can't come in. Okay, so if there is sufficient mutuality, even in the absence of an active sense of oneness, and if the separate beings do not transgress or deviate from their norms of limited knowledge, harmony and truth can still be sovereign, and evil will have no gate of entry. So emotionally also, if there is a mutual feeling and understanding, then evil cannot come in. Can still be sovereign. There is therefore no automatic inevitable cosmicity of falsehood and evil, even as there is no absoluteness. So what he is saying is, even in the physical world, where there is so much of falsehood and perversion, it is not necessary. It does exist, but it is possible not to have falsehood and evil even in the physical world. There is therefore no authentic inevitable cosmicity of falsehood and evil, even as there is no absoluteness. There are circumstances or results. They are circumstances or results that arise only at a certain stage when separativeness culminates in opposition and ignorance in a positive unconsciousness of knowledge and a resultant wrong consciousness and wrong knowledge with its content of wrong will, wrong feeling, wrong action and wrong reaction. So, when the ego is there and I feel myself separate from you, it can begin with a difference of mild opinion, but it can become also a difference of strong opinions, and it can also end up with an actual clash. So that's what he's saying. But it's not essential. Now, the question is, at what juncture of cosmic manifestation the opposites enter in? For it may be either at some stage of an increasing involution of consciousness in separative mind and life, or only after the plunge into inconscience. So, is this clear? He is saying that in the involution, does it start at the mental level, does it start at the vital level, or is it only in the inconscience? That's the question he is asking. Okay, so this resolves itself into the question of whether falsehood, error, wrong and evil exist originally in the mental and vital planes and are native to mind and life, or are proper only to the material manifestation because inflicted on mind and life there by the obscurity arising from the inconscience.
It's a good point, huh? Very important point.
Yes. So what he's saying is, in the involution, when it's coming down, you are starting from the pure consciousness, pure ananda, pure force, everything. When you are coming down, in the involutionary planes, he is asking the question, is it there in mind and life or only in matter? So, he says elsewhere that in those planes, there is no falsehood and wrong. It's only in the evolution that they come in. It's like a double ladder.
Can never be from the involution.
Yes. In the involution, it is not there.
Yes.
But in the evolution, they come in. So let's see what he's saying. Okay, so yeah. So I'll read that sentence again. This resolves itself into the question whether falsehood, error, wrong, and evil exist originally in the mental and vital planes and are native to mind and life, or are proper only in the material manifestation because inflicted on mind and life there by the obscurity arising from the inconscience. So the mental and vital planes in the involution, or is it only in the material? Okay, so it may be questioned too whether, if they do exist in supraphysical mind and life, they are original and inevitable there, for they may rather have entered in as a consequence or a supraphysical extension from the material manifestation. Or if that is untenable, it may be that they arose as an enabling supraphysical affirmation in the universal mind and life, a precedent necessary for their appearance in that manifestation, to which they more naturally belong as an inevitable outcome of the creative inconscience. Note the word creative inconscience. Inconscience is creating. That's what science says. So, this last bit we should be very clear about what he's saying.
Yes.
Okay, before we read this last bit again, I will say, there is an involution first. You are beginning from truth, consciousness, ananda, okay, and pure force. So you are starting from a base of absolute non-falsehood. You are coming down. So these are the involutionary planes. They are pure planes. They are typal planes and pure planes. But when it starts coming up here, our mind is a formation of universal mind, but because it is coming from down, there is falsehood and error is possible. In pure subtle matter also, in the involutionary stage, there is nothing wrong. Okay? But when it comes from here, from inconscience you are starting up, physical matter, not subtle matter, physical matter, there can be the possibility of enter. Then when you come to the vital, certainly evil starts coming up, and mind. But as soon as you go beyond mind, again you are entering into fields which are above, there is no evil there. So it's a result of evolution. It's not fundamentally there in the downward movement. Okay, so I'll read that again. It may be questioned too whether, if they do exist in supraphysical mind and life. Now what does he mean by supraphysical mind and life? Our mind and life is not supraphysical, it is physical. So supraphysical mind is a universal plane of mind which is involutionary. Supraphysical life is a plane of life in the involution. Our life is not supraphysical, it is physical life because it's coming from matter. So this must be very, very clearly understood. So there is no possibility, but here it is possibility. It may be questioned too whether, if they do exist in supra-physical mind and life, they are original and inevitable there. These are questioning. For they may rather have entered in as a consequence or a supra-physical extension from the material manifestation. So, material is matter influencing those planes also? He is asking. Okay. For they may rather have entered in as a consequence of a supra-physical extension from the material manifestation. Or if that is untenable, it may be that they arose as an enabling supra-physical affirmation in the universal mind and life, a precedent necessary for their appearance in that manifestation to which they more naturally belong as an inevitable outcome of creative inconscience. Just 1 minute. Okay. So, here when he is saying enabling supraphysical affirmation, he means, do they exist in seed form there? That's what he is saying. Or if that is untenable, it may be that they arose as an enabling supraphysical affirmation. So, do they exist in seed form? A potential possible that then flowers in lower manifestation, he is asking. In other words, are they already potential in the supraphysical, okay, over mind where they may originate, thus enabling falsehood and error to sprout and blossom in the physical world? So, now he will go further and tell you. Okay. It was for a long time held by the human mind as a traditional knowledge that when we go beyond the material plane, these things are found to exist there also in worlds beyond us. So, he is saying that they do exist in there. There are in these planes of supraphysical experience powers and forms of vital mind and life that seem to be the pre-physical foundation of the discordant, defective or perverse forms and powers of life mind and life force which we find in the terrestrial existence. There are forces, and subliminal experience seems to show that they are supraphysical beings embodying those forces that are attached in their root nature to ignorance, to darkness of consciousness, to misuse of force, to perversity of delight, to all the causes and consequences of the things that we call evil. These powers, beings or forces are active to impose their adverse constructions upon terrestrial creatures. He is talking of the asuric forces,
yes,
the vital forces, that
yes,
the evil forces that can oppose you. They oppose the increase of light and truth and good, and still more are antagonistic to the progress of the soul towards a divine consciousness and divine existence. Hostile beings exist in the vital worlds. It is this feature of existence that we see figured in the tradition of the conflict between the powers of light and darkness, good and evil, cosmic harmony and cosmic anarchy, a tradition universal in ancient myth and in religion and common to all systems of occult knowledge. So, now he is telling you that they do seem to exist in the life world and the mental world.
but not in the evolution.
Let's see how he is saying. He is discussing all these things.
Yes.
So, this is a very small para.
Yeah.
We can read the next one.
Okay.
Or I can do one thing.
Yeah, we can do the next one.
Okay. I'll read the summary of what he is saying in this para.
Okay.
In all countries and cultures where occult knowledge was developed, we find records of powers and forces of darkness, falsehood and evil, and they give the impression of being above and before the physical world. These are forces and beings of darkness, ignorance, perversity and evil. They are bent on obstructing the pilgrim soul striving towards God. They beset his path and mislead, misdirect, confuse, and impede his journey. This fact is figured as a conflict and war between the gods and the asuras, powers of darkness and light. But he will tell us afterwards that this is only in the evolution, not in the involution. The theory of this traditional knowledge is perfectly rational and verifiable by inner experience, and it imposes itself if we admit the supraphysical and do not cabin ourselves in the adaptation of material being as the only reality. So, if you are not a materialist, you can experience these things: evil and falsehood in the vital planes. Okay? As there is a cosmic self and spirit pervading and upholding the universe and its beings, so too there is a cosmic force that moves all things, and on this original cosmic force depend and act many cosmic forces that are its powers or arise as forms of its universal action. Whatever is formulated in the universe has a force or forces that support it, seek to fulfill or further it, find their foundation in its functioning, their account of success in its success, and growth and domination, their self-fulfillment or their prolongation of being in its victory or survival. As there are powers of knowledge or forces of the light, so there are powers of ignorance and tenebrous forces of the darkness whose work is to prolong the reign of ignorance and inconscience. As there are forces of truth, so there are forces that live by the falsehood and support it and work for its victory. As there are powers whose life is intimately bound up with the existence, the idea and the impulse of good, so there are forces whose life is bound up with the existence, invisible, that was symbolized in the
and the idea. The existence and the idea.
Yeah, just 1 second.
Just one sentence.
Yeah, I'll read that again. As there are forces of truth, so there are forces that live in the falsehood, live by the falsehood, and support it, and work for its victory. As there are powers whose life is intimately bound up with the existence, the idea, and the impulse of good, so there are forces whose life is bound up with the existence and the idea of the impulse of evil. It is this truth of the cosmic invisible that was symbolized in the ancient belief of a struggle between the powers of light and darkness, good and evil, for the possession of the world and the government of the life of man. This was the significance of the contest between the Vedic gods and their opponents, sons of darkness and division, figured in a later tradition as Titan and giant and demon, Asura, Rakshasa, Pisacha. The same tradition is found in the Zoroastrian double principle and the later Semitic opposition of God and his angels on the one side and Satan and his hosts on the other. Invisible personalities and powers that draw man to the divine light and truth and good, or lure him into subjection to the undivine principle of darkness and falsehood and evil. Modern thought is aware of no invisible forces other than those revealed or constructed by science. It does not believe that nature is capable of creating any other beings than those around us in the physical world: men, beasts, birds, reptiles, fishes, insects, germs, and animalculae. But if there are invisible cosmic forces, physical in their nature, that act upon the body of inanimate objects, there is no valid reason why there should not be invisible cosmic forces, mental and vital, in their nature that act upon his mind and his life force. And if mind and life, impersonal forces, form conscious beings or use persons to embody them in physical forms and in a physical world and can act upon matter and through matter, it is not impossible that on their own planes they should form conscious beings whose subtler substance is invisible to us, or that they should be able to act from those planes on beings in physical nature. Whatever reality or mythical unreality we may attach to the traditional figures of past human belief or experience, they would then be representations of things that are true in principle. In that case, the first source of good and evil would be not in terrestrial life or in the evolution from the inconscience, but in life itself. Their source would be supraphysical, and they would be reflected here from a larger supraphysical nature. So he is still questioning.
Yes.
He is still saying that in spiritual experience and occult experience, you do see that not in the physical world, but in the vital worlds, you see when you have experiences that there are asuric forces, there are hostile powers which try to impede your progress. So, are they there or are they here? This is what is questioning. It can be held. I will read the summary.
Good.
That this theory of good and evil, truth and falsehood, is quite rational, and spiritual experience confirms it. If man limits himself only to the physical world, he will not be witness to these subtler truths of the higher planes. So you have to go into the vital world or the mental world. Just as there is a cosmic spirit that exists in each individual, there is also a cosmic spirit that supports and upholds each being. There is also a cosmic force that moves and activates each individual form. Whatever is manifested in the physical world has a force that activates and motivates each existence. All dualities exist in the physical world, and each form has a corresponding force behind it. Therefore, truth as well as falsehood have corresponding forces that set them in motion. Okay. Also, let us note that each impersonal principle has an attendant personal being that represents it. Now, this is a very important thing we have to understand.
Yes.
Suppose there is wind which is impersonal here, there will be a wind god. Any virtue that you have here, generosity, kindness, gratitude, there will be a god, a person representing these qualities. And all these persons are there in the overmind consciousness. Okay, so. Also let us note that each impersonal principle has an attendant personal being that represents it. There are therefore personalities representing truth as well as falsehood. Their function is to prolong and encourage the rule of ignorance and inconscience. This is the principle behind the representative fight between light and darkness, truth and falsehood, good and evil. The Vedas are replete with the conflict of these forces, constantly at war with each other. Why then does not the material man believe in these forces that belong to the supraphysical planes? Science believes in only sense-based experience, but even science believes in forces that are not based on the senses. A very important point. TV signals, mobile waves, you don't see them, and yet you believe in them. So why don't you believe in these, he is asking. So, but even science believes in forces that are not based on the senses. Science believes in ultraviolet, infrared, gravitation and cosmic rays. Therefore, there is no valid reason to disbelieve these subtler realities of the supraphysical worlds. Again, mind and life are impersonal cosmic forces, but each of them produce individual physical forms to represent them in the physical world. Thus, mind produces man and life begets plants and animals. In that case, why cannot mind and life produce subtler individual forms in their own cosmic planes of existence, which would be capable of influencing the physical world? Then we may conclude that truth and falsehood are both pre-physical realities in the involution and not taking their birth from the inconscience. He is saying we may conclude. So he is still saying that these are all. Sri Aurobindo is never imposing his ideas on you. He is saying, let us examine, let us see this possibility, that possibility, and then we will come to a conclusion. So we stop here today. This is certain that 6:26.
This is certain will be next week, Saturday. Thank you, Ranga. Thank you. Namaste.